Good morning, everyone. Are you ready for day 3 of Change Now? Welcome to our Youth Parliament Generation Democracy. My name is Agata Meissner. I'm a co-founder of Generation Climate Europe and a climate justice strategist. The Youth Parliament is a very special format at Change Now. It's a half-a-day program that has been specifically co-designed for all of you with a group of young people coming from nonprofits, startups, social enterprises, and grassroots. And we won't stop with just a session. We'll capture all of your ideas and contributions into a Youth Parliament publication and a Democracy Toolbox after Change Now. That means we have an interactive and exciting session ahead of us. Today, you'll be guided by 3 moderators. Myself, Jadi Fonseca, who's an inspiring poet and a narrative weaver, and Mohamed El Amir, who's an incredible ocean activist and a biomaterial entrepreneur. In this year's Youth Parliament, we're focusing on democracy. So to begin, let's start with a little exercise. I invite you to picture this world. A head of state of the world's largest economy is unlawfully attacking other countries because he believes his own mind is more important than international law. The world's richest person is allowed to spend his fortune to steer the elections in Europe's largest country, supporting an extremist political group. And social media algorithms are prioritizing polarized far-right content, reinforcing a narrow worldview, which leads people to hate rather than to understand each other. Citizens' private movements are tracked, allowing governments and the tech giants to collect information on where they are, what they do, and what they buy. At first glance, this might sound like a plot of a new dystopian Netflix show, or maybe a political version of cyberpunk. But this is our reality today. And yet, this is only part of the picture. And you'll buy into this version of reality if you limit yourself to scrolling social media, talking with people with the same worldview, because, it's comfortable and safe and reassuring, or reading the oh-so-dramatic headlines that we see everywhere. But if you do, you'll miss out on the more hopeful stories, like the one where citizens across Europe pushed the My Voice, My Choice campaign past 1 million signatures, forcing the European Commission to respond to demands for safe and accessible abortion. Or the one in Bangladesh, where Gen Z protests led to what is now widely cited as the first successful Gen Z revolution in the world that inspired other Gen Z activists in other Asian countries. Or the one in Taiwan, where citizens and governments work together through digital platforms like V-Taiwan to deliberate on complex issues and directly shape legislation. The truth is that, yes, democracy is under attack, but it's also being reimagined and fought for before our own eyes. So let us dive a little deeper into what democracy is, how to protect it, how to rebuild it, and what are some of the myths around democracy. I'm delighted to welcome on stage Ziad Majed, who is a political scientist, a professor, and Middle East Studies program coordinator at the American University of Paris. Ziad has written books on Lebanon, on Syria, on Palestine, and on regional politics and transitions in Arab countries. So let's give him a big round of applause. Ziad, you spent years analyzing democratic movements, particularly in contexts where democracy is contested, fragile, or actively suppressed. So I just wanted to start with the first key question, because this is Generation Democracy. What do we actually mean when we say democracy?
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. To talk about democracy, I think most of you know what are the basic aspects of its definition. But let's say that in addition to the fact that democracy is about the right of people to choose their own representatives in managing the public and the common affairs through elections and through free and fair elections, which by itself is a big challenge, democracy is also about the separation of power, not to allow anyone to concentrate powers in the hands of a few. It is about the independence of the judiciary, so that accountability, so that transparency could always be a basis for judgment and for being involved or being connected to the public affairs. It is about the expression and the freedom of expression, about the media, about diversity, about social conducts that are based on tolerance, on accepting differences. That's why elections exist. So democracy is a series of philosophical principles, legislations, laws, practices that should sustain and protect a political system in which people have a voice, in which they can vote, they can follow up on what is happening in the public sphere, they can ask their representatives questions, they can look into the way they vote in the parliament to see what kind of legislations they support. They should have the right to form political parties, to join civil society organizations, to be part of unions. But democracy is not only that, of course. During the Cold War, for instance, and because of the fear of the Soviet Union, many democratic countries tried to bring in lots of notions related to social justice, related to dealing with economic disparities. When it comes to international relations, democracy was supposed as well to create an international system where countries do have, we cannot say equal voices, but at least equal presence in international organizations. The idea of having an international law and an international humanitarian law was also to put regulations when conflicts erupt, to avoid conflicts when that is possible, to have a United Nations system in which all voices can be heard, in which discussions, deliberations can take place. But unfortunately, with time, first when it comes to international relations and when it comes to the United Nations system, we do see more and more tendencies for the powerful nations to impose their will and to impose their interests on the rest of the humanity, regardless of democratic principles, regardless of universalism, and regardless of international law. We can see it in wars, we can see it in violations of international law that remain in total impunity. We can see it in the way the veto right is being used on the international scene. The veto right was put in place to secure a kind of peaceful arrangements, to avoid confrontations between nuclear nations. Today, the veto right is being used to protect allies of the powerful nations, even when they commit crimes against humanity, even when they commit war crimes. So on the international level, there is a big issue when it comes to democracy. And on the national level, there are still lots of reflections, analysis, organizations that try to observe, to monitor elections, to try to bring in ideas for reforms so that democracy would not stagnate within a certain set of principles and practices that can be threatened from time to time. As you said, they are vulnerable. So there is always work also in democracy. It's not a system that should not evolve. The challenge, in fact, is how to develop it, to make it a mirror of the needs of a society and of the way it can represent itself in the best way possible.
Thank you. Democracy has been, I would say, very much at the center of a lot of discussions, particularly in the last few years. But I think in many cases, it has been dominated by that Western perspective. So I think it's one of those misconceptions that people might have about what democracy actually is. I'm wondering, what are some of the other ones that you've seen in your work, some of the common myths, perhaps, about what democracy is and how it looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of misconceptions when it comes to democracy. One of them is that there are only some people or some societies in the world where democracy is possible, or where the individuals and the collectivities deserve democracy. We can hear it sometimes in the media, in political discourses, in different narratives, that some parts of the world, since you mentioned that I'm originally from the Middle East, from Lebanon, we hear today lots of people saying, but democracy cannot work in these societies because their culture is not compatible with democratic practices. This is definitely a culturalistic approach. This is almost a racist approach, because democracy is supposedly universal. It's true that it started in countries where, after a certain capitalistic accumulation, where a certain trajectory in history brought democracy as a political system to manage and to govern territories and populations. And we're talking obviously about some Western nations. But democracy is universal, and there are lots of non-Western nations where democracy is functioning and is meeting challenges, of course, but is still the mode of life of people and society. While democracy itself is being threatened in many Western countries, from the United States of America with the series of Donald Trump violations of many democratic contracts, to countries in Europe where the far right is a real challenge to democracy, where you do have concentration as well, and economic disparities are leading to more and more challenges when it comes to democracy. Plus, there is another misconception, considering that whenever we have democracy, then all problems can be dealt with easily, or that if we are a democratic nation, it means we do not commit violations of international law. This is definitely wrong. Most violations of international law today, severe violation when it comes to armed conflicts, are committed by many cases by very powerful nations that have a democratic history and a long democratic tradition and a series of practices that supposedly are democratic, and in the roots of their political culture, democracy was there. So you can be in a democratic nation and, due to the balance of power, due to impunity, still violate international law, and this is something extremely serious to address. Then another misconception is related to the fact that many believe that as long as we have democracy, we should not keep thinking of developing our political systems. While with time, it appeared that democracy can be challenged by non-democratic forces within the democratic arena itself. They can use elections to reach power and then try to violate series of laws, try to modify series of legislations. So democracy should always be reconsidered as a path, as a system that should regularly evolve. It needs regularly as well reforms. It needs to respond to new challenges. Now we see the ecologic challenge, the climate change challenge, that requires lots of reconsidering many democratic practices. With time and with more and more feminist movements imposing the discourse, challenging patriarchal structure, because we can be in a democracy but having a very strong patriarchal structure discriminating against women. So this is now a real challenge, how to rethink politics with a different approach. We did have democracies in which racism was also implemented through discriminating against part of the population, whether because of their skin color, or because of their ethnicity, or because of their language. We can see it today. Yesterday, for example, in Israel, the parliament did vote a law in which the death penalty can only and exclusively be applied to Palestinian prisoners accused of terrorism. It cannot apply to non-Palestinian meaning to other Israeli citizens in the state of Israel. I'm not talking about the occupied territories of 1967. While we keep saying that this is a democracy, however, its law that is exclusively about one specific group is definitely not a democratic practice. The same thing was in South Africa for a long period of time, where you did have democracy for white people and white settlers, while the black population in South Africa, the overwhelming majority of the South Africans, were deprived and did not have the same rights and the same access. The same for the United States in a certain period of time. And today, more and more, there are threats on democracy by rising authoritarian regimes, even if they were elected. We can see it in Europe, we can see it in India, we can see it in many places. I'm excluding the Middle East because, unfortunately, we are struggling as societies to bring in democracy or to protect what already exists in forms of freedoms of expression, but we're not yet democratic nations or states with a democratic experience.
You touched upon something very interesting, which is that hypocrisy of what does it actually mean to be democratic at home and democratic abroad, and how can we actually consistently fight for democracy? Because what very often happens, and we've seen this with Palestine, but also with many, many other situations, is that a country, as you said, considered democratic, does so internally, but that when it comes to what's happening abroad, it's a whole other story. And it's a big hypocrisy of then calling other countries undemocratic, where in fact the processes in the country itself are problematic themselves. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about alternatives, because there have been more and more people recently calling for alternatives to democracy, calling for a new system, saying, listen, the system doesn't work anymore, it doesn't respond to the needs that we have right now, we need to push for something new, we need to push for something better. So I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about, okay, so what are these alternatives? I mean, how could this actually look like? How could the system better, different than democracy actually function?
Well, thank you for this question, because I think this is extremely important to address at the same time the democratic challenges nationally and internationally. It's becoming more and more impossible to disconnect them and to consider that we can live in isolated islands as long as things are okay in our own society. We don't care about what's happening elsewhere. This is becoming more and more impossible because of globalization, because of media, because of people traveling, because of mobility, because of a new generation that is not satisfied with this kind of argument, that is reading, discovering, traveling. So this is very important to deal with. Well, for the national level first, I think that we have been used to deal with representative democracy. While there are other forms today of democracy that can be related as well to deliberative democracy, to participative democracy, meaning I do not only vote and then I wait 4 more years or 2 more years or 5 more years to vote again. I need to be in between, engaged, committed. I can join social movements, I can join unions, I can join political parties. I need to see what kind of laws and regulations and legislations are being voted. I need to have a say. We can start at the university level, even at the school level, in terms of dealing with challenges on campus or when it comes to our student life. It can follow us everywhere. There is a democratic culture that should be once again encouraged and should encourage people to be interested in different questions. There should be as well policies related to the economic disparities, because it's becoming more and more difficult to have billionaires who are in politics, who own media, who can have influence on public opinion, who can accumulate money in a pervert way, I mean in an incredible way, while you do have as well in democratic nations themselves people who are totally marginalized and forgotten. So automatically there is no equality between them when it comes to political representation, to political influence, and there is a need for more laws and regulations and legislations related to the question of social justice, bringing it back to the center of democracy, not only as a response to the Soviet Union threat as it used to be a few decades ago, but as a threat to the monopoly of power, of influence inside the society. So more participation, more freedoms, defending what exists, asking for more, observing, participating in campaigns, signing petitions, reading about what's happening everywhere. All of those could, let's say, support democracy and making it as well and make it more participative and not only representative or based on elections. At the same time, since we said we cannot disconnect what is happening locally with internationally, what's happening elsewhere, there is a huge interest today and even a necessity, a vital necessity, to look at what's happening around us. We live at a moment where more and more racist discourses are being tolerated, where more and more wars and terrible violence are targeting societies with total impunity because of the powerful actors who are involved. International law is becoming an opinion, not a principle that should manage our all international relations. The powerful nations do consider that whatever they decide should be accepted without the principle of democracy in international relations. So maybe if we start in Europe, the idea of a European Union that is more responsible, more independent in dealing with international affairs, more concerned with international law, more concerned with international mechanisms, could be a start because the EU is losing its weight, is losing its role, and at a moment where there is a war in Eastern Europe with the Russian war on Ukraine, when the United States do allow themselves to intervene everywhere, and now the war in Iran, regardless of what we think of the Iranian regime itself, that is very brutal, but war was a violation of international law. When we see what's happening in Palestine, in Gaza, in the West Bank, when we see what's happening in Lebanon, when we talk about occupation and illegal colonization with all the crimes against humanity going with, and we see that either it's silence or complicity, we have to ask lots of questions about our responsibilities as citizens, at least on our level, how to be more vocal, how to read more, to share more information, to encourage colleagues and other friends to be interested, to talk to our representatives on the municipal level, on the parliamentary level, wherever we can, to be present as citizens, because this is a responsibility. It's a duty and a responsibility not to accept that internationally impunity dominates, that we can tolerate and live with a genocide or with a violation or with a war for reasons that are not legal and justified. And on the local level, how to always be on the national level ready to defend what democracy brought as privileges and as guarantees for our life together, and to be ready as well to think of developing it, of finding alternative. Some of them are not ready elaborated, but they can be with common work and with these kind of events and the work of think tanks and of interested politicians.
So yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. I think what it makes me realize is that democracy is actually continuously constructed and reconstructed. And that begins with the stories that we tell. So that's exactly where we're going to go next. I will hand over to Jari Fonseca, who will take us on a collective storytelling journey to use the power of imagination and imagine what democracy actually could look like if we truly allowed ourselves to imagine it. Thank you so much.
Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you're feeling well. Thank you so much, Agatha, and thank you so much, Zayed, for the conversation we had started today. As you heard, we've learned that democracy is something that we constantly practice. It's something that sustain a political system that makes sure that every person has a voice. But at the same time, democracy principles are eroding. So let me take you all in a journey. It's time to move from, as Rob would say, what is to what if, so we can start imagining different ways of practicing democracy. So I will invite you to drop your values with me and then dive into a creative flow as a river does. And then at the end, we'll simply end with a confluence with different points of view with our panelists. So to start off, I will ask you all to take your phones out so we can start thinking about the values that we want to bring for a democracy of the future for us, for the next democracy we want. So please scan the code that we're going to show up in the screens soon, and I will ask you, what is the value that you want to bring for democracy? Please think of it as a North Star. I would love for you to potentially bring joy, love, maybe collective decision-making, whatever that. Trust is a good one. Joy, care, health. Equality. It's a big one for democracy. I love that love keeps at the center, no? Isn't it beautiful for us to create a potential democracy that is guided by love? And equity, of course. Thank you so much for contributing the value that you think should be the North Star of democracy. And throughout this journey, you'll see that maybe that I will be finding some roadblocks, some difficulties navigating, because we're talking about creativity, we're talking about narrative, stories. Nothing is straightforward, but that's where we find the wonder of new possibilities. So don't worry, I will be your guide. If you get lost, that's great. It means that you're diving into the creative process. So when you're gonna, the next steps of this conversation, please keep in mind the values that you put in there. But before we dive further into it, that we're going to ask you all to write stories, I will invite a poet, a storyteller to the stage that it's going to inspire us all to get our creative juices flowing. So please, welcome to the stage, Louis Grégo. He grew up in Paris. He moved to London in 2017. He's been studying now French philosophy in the King's College in the Masters. So please, yes, I will let him take the stage and inspire us with a special story.
Amazing. Today I'm going to speak to you about an alternative. We are in the zone à défendre, the zone to be defended of Notre-Dame-des-Landes, at the very top of the lighthouse, which was built at the exact spot the control tower for the Nantes airport was going to be built. And I am talking with Jay, paintbrush in hand. We share a childhood in the United Kingdom and a place for a week. The lighthouse is about 30 meters high, and I do not particularly enjoy being taller than a tree. Jay passes me the joint, I draw, exhale, and imagine myself a decade later. I wonder what a successful social struggle looks like, what it truly means to have survived a way of inhabiting the world which did not suit me. Jay supposes it begins with oneself. The world does not change, according to him, regardless of the quantity of poetry one writes and subsequently recites on the top of a lighthouse. But one can inhabit the world as a poet and change lives that way, one by one, before we all drop dead. We are dying to do. Indeed, the Greek root for the word poetry means to make. And think again of all the ways we've failed to change my life and the world for the better. Through academia, squats, agriculture, writing poetry, nothing quite works out, or at least doesn't leave us or leave me with a feeling of incompleteness. I take another drag and I say to myself, okay, let's think further. What about creating an anarchist community in Guadeloupe, where my ancestors are from? We need to swallow something from the top of this lighthouse. Not necessarily something physical, but an answer to what we came looking for next to Jay. Jay tells the story of Rojava, the independent anarchist nation-state at the border of Syria and Turkey. A fine outcome. Many deaths, women with Kalashnikovs. Jay sings at the top of the lighthouse. In the end, you are weary of this urban world. Shepherdess, oh mother culture, the flock that we are. Beasts of burden, we cry. You have had enough. You have had enough of living in French, American, and English modernity. Here, even the banknotes are old, our guides invisible. Resistance alone has remained new. Resistance has remained simple, like the forest of Notre-Dame-des-Landes. Alone in the world, mother culture, you are old, but less old than humanity. Your voice loops endlessly, your chains are rusted, and you, whom the windows observe, shame holds you back. From crying for help and taking the leap, you read the zines, the flyers, the posters that sing aloud the cry of man. Here is poetry. This morning, and for prose, there are the pamphlets, distributed freely, full of beautiful, real, illegal adventures, portraits of the great activists and 1,000 diverse hopes. I saw this morning a lovely Zad, whose name I have forgotten. New and clean in the sun, it was the clarion call, the workers, the farmers, the resistance. From Monday morning to Saturday evening, 4 times a day they pass through. In the morning, 3 times the lighthouse beam moans. It moans a forbidden song that barks there at noon. The walls tagged, the words shouting against the ramparts. The joyful ones like parrots screech. I love the grace of this free Zad in Notre-Dame-des-Landes, between Nantes and the beautiful ocean. And to finish, Jay tells us of communal luxury. 2 words. Finally, through speech, the pen, the pencil, through the popular reproduction of masterpieces, through the intelligent and moralizing images that can be spread in abundance and posted in the town halls of the humblest communes of France, the committee will contribute to our regeneration, to the inauguration of communal luxury, and to the splendors of the future, and to the universal republic. Upon arriving in the ZAD, we may ask, how do we anchor art once again in our struggles, in our territories, and in our lives? How can art become a means and not an end? A useful process that nourishes a radical social and ecological transformation, rather than a detached luxury, a pastime for the wealthy. So how? To care for the lighthouse of the ZAD. It's a fine example of communal luxury, a notion proposed by the Federation of Artists during the Paris Commune of 1871. 2 words, a weapon of imagination against state propaganda, for autonomous territories, a criterion of wealth defying capitalist value and the growth economy, betting on the aesthetic dimension of everyday life. Everyone can have their share of the best. The ZAD, a fine example of communal luxury. A lighthouse is better than a control tower. A middle finger to the government. During a moving debate, the organizer of the week asked participants to position themselves in the room in response to the following question. Are you optimistic about the future? Everyone, with the exception of Charles, a farmer in his 60s, and Romain, my best friend, a young and crusty punk, places themselves on the no side. Charles and Romain explain why they chose to sit on the yes side. If I have no hope, what is the point of waking up every morning and trying to resist, to do things differently? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much for inspiring us with this poem. And I love what you brought about communal luxury. How can we create luxury that is accessible for everybody? So now I will turn to all of you, but don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to write whole stories. But let's start writing maybe 2-sentence stories. I will also put a little bit of code on the screen so you can scan again and start writing a 2-story that makes you feel hopeful about collective decision making. Do you need examples? Don't worry, we have some. For example, I thought I was alone, but I changed my mind when I had tea with my neighbor. Do you have an example to share with us?
An example. When I think of freedom, I want it to mean that we can be autonomous. That is, to give our political collective our own laws. I don't want to be a superhuman, a cyborg, to live in a VR in order to be freed from the material world. I want to care for my people.
So, scan the code that will show up in the next few seconds and start writing your story so we can all collectively start rewriting the narratives that make sense for us for democracy. Oh, I think we got the wrong QR code, probably the one before, because now you're not supposed to vote just yet. But you can also vote if you're already very excited. Just little technical questions. We're going to get there. And in the meantime, I can also read some additional examples to get your creative juices flowing. So I was screaming to the void, thinking that my voice carried no weight, until I was lifted up when I was echoed in your voice.
I woke up yesterday morning, listened to the radio, and heard Ferris Barkat, the creator of Banlieue Climat, tell me the story of his activism. We can do this.
So now that we have the right code on the screen, so feel free to start writing your stories. And hopefully we'll collect enough so we can eventually write new narratives that will make sense for us of democracies that we want for the future. Más amor, por favor. Oh, I'm loving them. Cultural values are my lighthouse. Isn't that beautiful?
I like this one. Thank you, guys. The luxuries of life are already here. We live on a planet of life and wonder. We just need to kill some billionaires and get it back.
Ooh.
We do not advocate for murder, guys, but yes.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your creativity. This is so beautiful. Más amor, por favor. We have in different languages too.
Yeah, it's great.
This is very exciting. I'll give you guys 2 more minutes so you can fill in your stories and you can paint new narratives for what collective decision-making actually means for you. Oh, and you can actually like the stories that you resonate with, which is very nice.
If an ecosystem dies, something in all of us dies. That's very true.
Yes. There's so many people who want to do good, and I got cut. Wow. I think we definitely need to organize a way for people to keep putting their stories
Absolutely.
and then visiting other stories later on, because this is very beautiful, and I think it makes me very hopeful.
It's great.
So just giving the last 60 seconds before we will jump to the next section of our panel. Right of everybody to participate in political process, not just elections. Yes. Democracy is much more than just elections, as I had mentioned before.
I like how much ecology-focused things we are seeing.
Yes.
It's very important. It's
At the
perfect
end.
what I'm going to speak about.
Yes. It is all connected at the end, no?
It is.
Yes. So as we close, I want to thank everybody for contributing, and hopefully I will continue to hear more of those stories in the coming days, weeks, months. We'll keep in touch. But now that we're moving on to the next section, I would like to invite two panelists that will help us confluence some ideas about how narratives influence our lives, our societies, and our behaviors. So, now that you first initially had the drops and told us the value that you want democracy to have and guide us, and then Lou influenced us with a flow of imagination, and you all contributed to a river of imagination and stories. I'm going to call to the stage very soon Rob Hopkins, the co-founder of the Transition Movement and author of public speaker and time traveler. He's the author of several books, most recently, How to Fall in Love with the Future. He's currently developing a touring live show called Field Recording of the Future, which blends light projection, storytelling, and ambient music created around the world, recording made in places that tell the story about the future. So his monthly newsletter, which calls the Time Travel Gazette, it's something that I highly recommend you all follow. And then the next person I will call onto the stage is Steph Benarek. It's a climate psychologist, system thinker, and founder and director of the Center of Climate Psychology. She has worked as a consultant for local and national government, large NGOs, and corporate. Steffi added a book that is highly appreciated called Climate Psychology and Change, which was called A Work of Wisdom and Radical Ideas by Satish Kumar, and has been endorsed by Bill McKibben and Frichard Capra and other leading system thinkers. So please join us on the stage for a panel conversation on how we can confluence our minds and think about how narratives can influence our society. So before we start the panel, I'm just going to open with a special quote that was attributed to Rebecca Solnit. Thank you. Stories can be our prisons or our wings. It can open doors, but they can also slam doors. The future is not yet written. We are writing it in the present moment, with our actions, but also our inactions. So, I will ask the first question, and I would love every one of you to answer, which is, could you tell us how you see narratives influencing our lives, our societies, and the systems like democracy? I'll pass it on to you, Steffi, first.
Thanks, Jadi. I think that the stories we tell about what it means to be human, so the stories we tell about who we are and what is possible, are incredibly powerful. So the stories we tell about what we think we know influences how we show up for the future, and they tie us also to the present moment. So very often, we are trying to solve the problems of the future with the same stories that have created the problems that we're trying to solve. And I give you one example. In Western modernity, we often assume that good mental health is the ability to function symptom-free within a dysfunctional society. So if we tell this story, then my attention goes to the person who is suffering right now. Whereas if we say that good mental health is actually the capacity to suffer with the world, my attention wanders somewhere else. And here, right now, where we all are, we are telling a story that change happens by having some people on a stage and some people listening to the words that we're saying. So if that's the story we tell, then this is what we're enacting right now. If we believe that change happens through relationship, we will create different conferences.
Me?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Well, I feel slightly fraudulent to be at a youth parliament. I think I'm the oldest person here. Thank you for tolerating me. I feel like in terms of narratives, when Margaret Thatcher said there is no alternative, something sort of got deep into our psyche that capitalism loves to present itself as this thing to which there is no alternative at all. And it led to this sort of neoliberal consensus for years that you can, tweak a little tax code here and there. You can make little changes, that change will happen kind of incrementally, and everybody seems to have just sort of gone along with that in most of sort of Western politics. And so I love how we've seen recently with Mamdani in New York, with Zach Polanski in the UK, who I think is extraordinary, who has completely kind of re-galvanized the Green Party in the UK with this narrative of make hope normal again. Bringing in this idea that you can challenge the big questions. You can actually be a politician who's credible and talk about Palestine. You can be a politician who questions economic growth, who argues that we need to move away from GDP to a well-being economy, who argues all these sorts of things. And with that, I think, comes the fact that we can look around the world and see places where that narrative is being changed. I love to use this term, evidence-based dreaming. That I kind of see what I do as being evidence-based dreaming. That if you go to the Netherlands right now, the Dutch government spend €500 million every year building the best cycling infrastructure you've ever seen in the world. If you go to Utrecht at 8 o'clock in the morning and sit by the train station, 40,000 bicycles cycle past you. It's extraordinary. It's like you've traveled into the future and you're just sitting there like 20 years into the future. But they do it because they've calculated that doing that saves them €19 billion every year off the national health bill. People live 6 months longer than usual. They make policy in a kind of joined up way. In the UK, we know that something like 40% of young men who get sent to prison were homeless in the 4 months before they were sent to prison, but we make criminal justice policy over here, housing policy over here, mental health policy over here, rather than seeing them all as being a new thing. So I feel like the narratives that we tell with the climate and ecological emergency presents us with a challenge in which that sort of incremental thinking is now absolutely inappropriate. And that we can, and there's something in there that we can really embrace to become a hell of a lot more bolder and more audacious, I think.
Thanks, Rob. And for myself, I guess I can pretty much only speak for my own domain, which some of you might have understood is like poetry and ecology. I look at the relationships between these two things, and a thing like we often forget is in the word ecology, we have two components. One, which is the eco, which means oikos, the home in Greek, and the second is the discourse, the logos, so which means everything we say, or we try to imagine about ecology is about our home, is about how we speak about the way we live in the world. And I think that's what narrative is to me, at least. That's what I try to do with my narrative. That's what we maybe all try to do, is to create new ways of imagining like possible futures and possible way of inhabiting the world, because the crisis of today, the crisis of democracy, is a crisis of imagination too. We truly don't know as individuals how to imagine new futures, and I guess that's why we're here today. And in my mind, like narratives help us to find like a kind of renewed proximity with the place and the people we live in, and that's what narratives can help us do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your answers, because for us, I think narrative, as you all touched on, is the foundation of how we start creating words and worlds. And I think it's very important for us to continue to exercise that imagination, so we're not stuck with one specific narrative, but you are able to populate our narratives with multiple colors and ideas. So I will actually jump back to Rob and ask another question, which is, why do you think we should fall in love with the future, and how are you inviting people to do so?
So thank you. So I think when I talk about that, I'm not saying that that's the only thing we should do, right? I think there is an enormous space for grief, for rage, for all of the responses to what's happening in the world. I'm certainly not advocating kind of giddy optimism all the time. I'd be deeply worried about anybody who was. But actually, you know, when often in movements, particularly around climate, which is where I'm more rooted, there's often a discussion. People love to look back to the civil rights movement in the US in the 60s and say, should we be more like Malcolm X? Should we be more like Martin Luther King? Should we be more like Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, or more like Climate Majority, more like and that the more radical moves the Overton window to make those things more acceptable. That's a really important conversation. But what it often misses out on is that at the same time, in the civil rights movement, you had the Black Panthers who were setting up free school meals, running ambulances in neighborhoods nobody else would, things like that. And you had what people now look back and call the Afrofuturist movement, which was writers like Octavia Butler, Samuel R. Delany, musicians like Sun Ra and Parliament Funkadelic, who were looking forward into the future and filling it with these like a lot of generation of young black people who grew up loving science fiction about the future, and all those science fiction films had no black people in them, so they had to write their own. And I feel like that kind of utopian, not utopian, kind of what we now would call through-topian, like stories that talk about how we get from here to where we need to get to. If we don't, like Bell Hooks said, what we cannot imagine cannot come into being. And if we don't make space in our movements for imagination, for dreaming, for play, I think we're missing something really, really important. And so I love looking for things that give people an experience where at the end they can say, when I was in the future, there are many different future. Rashida Phillips of Black Quantum Futurism, who are amazing. Every time she writes the word future, she puts an S in a bracket on the end, because there are many, many different futures. But one of my favorite practices that my colleague Ruth Ben-Tovim has developed, called Town Anywhere, is this extraordinary thing you can do with between 30 and 400 people in a big space. You imagine the future, but then you literally build that future with a whole bunch of other people. You inhabit it, you live in it, you play in it. It's the most beautiful thing, really, really moves people very deeply. In my own work, as you mentioned, we're developing something called Field Recordings from the Future, which is going to be a mixture of music and projection and theater, where we pick people up in 2026 and we transport them to the 2036. The result from us doing everything we possibly could, and we spend an hour there taking them on a walk around and showing them all the different things there. Like the poet Rilke once said, the future must enter into you a long time before it happens. And I feel like in the activism that I'm doing, I'm trying to find the different ways to do that. There's a young woman in Berlin, activist called Wasima Labic, does this beautiful work called Muslim Futures, working with women there. And she wrote an article called On Sensual Futuring. Beautiful. It's the idea that it's not just about forming mental pictures. What does the future smell like? What does it sound like? What does it taste like? And also, you know, like I said, there are many, many different futures. But if we close the door on that being possible, then I think we really miss a trick in terms of what we could still do.
Thank you so much. And I love that you mentioned that it's not just one future, it's multiple futures, right? And I think one of the challenges that we're living right now is that the current situation is quite limited. There's one or two or maybe three narratives that are leading the way that we are behaving. So that takes me to the question that I have to Steffi, which is, again, one of the challenges that we are facing right now is just we have very few narratives dictating how our world works. So how do you think we can use our imagination not to fall into the same trap of single narratives?
So I'm speaking as a psychologist and a systems thinker. And from that perspective, I think we need to distinguish between two different kinds of imagination. One form of imagination means that as a human, I can imagine going from A to B, and if that straight line has a mountain in it, I can imagine blowing it up to make a way through that. And that has led to incredible discoveries. So that's a form of imagination that is required in order to get some discoveries. And we also know that we have created enormous harms because it has made us blind to all the unintended consequences. Now, I think we have to be really cautious about imagining a future that is so appealing that I want to get from A, where we are now, to that beautiful future I have imagined, because that can still be a straight line corrective that has unintended consequences that are unimaginable because I feel so attached to that image that my thinking mind has created. Now, this straight line, so we're going to complexity thinking now. This straight line thinking is helpful when I'm trying to solve complicated problems. It works really well. But the future with humans in it is not a complicated problem, it's a complex living system. And with that, we need completely different approaches, and I would really warn of an idealized future that I'm trying to create. We really need to go to complex systems, which is about relationships in the here and now. So how I create the relationships in the here and now will mean that a very different future emerges if I have less stories that are destructive now and more stories that are relational now. What that future will look like, nobody can know. And I would presume that if that future is going to be regenerative, it's going to blow our minds. It will become completely unimaginable from this place where we are now, because we're still bound within the story of modernity. So if we want to transgress that or transcend that, what emerges will have to be unimaginable from this point. The second aspect of imagination has nothing to do with thinking. So that's a shift in consciousness. So that's, from a psychological perspective, where we would go to the unconscious, where I go to mythology, nighttime dreams, altered states of consciousness. So that's where I give up control of the images that arise. The images are claiming me. I am being dreamt. And that's a realm where paradoxes don't have to be resolved. They can all be present at the same time. I transcend the realm of thinking. And so when we imagine a future, we often do so from a deeply anthropocentric perspective where the human and my capacity to imagine as a human is still central. So what I'm talking about is a decentering of our human capacity to imagine what we want and to feel like we have a right to go for what we want, but to actually have a more humble stance where we ask for help from something that is more than human. So that we are not stuck in the purely human story, and that something that is other can come in and disturb this straight line narrative. So
Thank you so much. And you made me think about You made me think a lot about a line from, I think, the Over story, which tells, we control nothing, but we influence everything. And I think when we're thinking about influence, we are thinking about relationship. We're not necessarily dictating a narrative, a way of being, a type of democracy. We are actually playing with the possibilities that could exist. So we are running a little bit of a time, but we have one final question to Louis. And you end your story, your poem, with the line of, if I have no hope, what is the point of waking up every morning and trying to resist, to do things differently? Can you tell me a little bit more about this line and what it means to you in the context of, creating new words, creating new narratives and new systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I don't know, I think I maybe foolishly believe that it's way more productive to have a positivist outlook on the world when trying to do either direct action or even thinking about what is actually possible for us today. Which, as Rob previously said, it doesn't mean not criticizing the violence and the things that are not going right in the world, but I think in the word critique, there is a huge amount of positivity in there. Critique means to separate, to make the best out of what we have. So yeah, we need to continue doing good things.
And you're hopeful with the idea that once we continue to wake up and do new things, continue to do new things, new stories will emerge?
I think so, because I think that's what we're looking for into narrative. We're looking to discover, as Steffi said, other truth, other kinds of experience that we can connect with. I don't know if you've ever read a book that's been really significant to you. You read it, and when you close the book, your life is not the same anymore. It's completely changed, and you have, wow, I have to change now, as the conference says. I have to be different. I have to act within myself and with my relationship with the other things, living or non-living, in a radically new way, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. And actually, you also mentioned something about the Z, and I love as I mentioned, the communal luxury. Can you also dive a little bit into how, it's a wild card of possibilities?
Yeah, of course. So for those who don't know about the ZAD is an autonomous, almost a small nation state within France that was created after a huge airport project was supposed to be built in Nantes, and it was occupied for 3 years by a group of activists and local people from the area, and there was huge fightings with the CRS and the activists. And finally, they actually won the struggle, the activists, and so the French government decided to give a pretty decent chunk of land to the activists for them basically to live without police, without elections, without government. So it's a really small government within the actual government, which tries to imagine a new way of being in the world, which actually works very well. I invite you to go see them. It still exists. It's there. It's in Notre-Dame-des-Landes, so next to Nantes, and it's amazing.
Yes, and as you mentioned, it might be a place of instability, but within the instability, there's a lot that can emerge, including new stories and new ways of organizing democracy, or even a system of functioning together as society.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, it really rests on horizontal hierarchy. So people, for example, to resolve crisis, have something that they call the Council of the 11, which means that every year they randomly select 11 people from the community that are in charge for the year to resolve conflicts between people, because there's always conflicts in communities, and it's often the biggest problem of how to resolve conflicts in such small spaces, and that's how they do it. They elect randomly people and they mediate. And it works.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for answering the questions. And just to close the panel right now, I'm going to look back on the journey that we actually did today. We looked back at the drops, the values that we wanted to carry for democracy of the future. We looked at, we actually let our creativity flow like a river by starting writing our own stories that could hopefully contribute to new narratives of futures. And now we're closing our confluence, which is thinking about how narratives influence our lives, our systems like democracy and society. So, as Eleanor Robbins beautifully puts, a writer, that might have been a little bit of a challenge to come up with stories. And that's totally fine, because we need to overcome those boundaries. And once you're able to overcome this frustration, you're also invited to pay attention to the stories that you feel in your bone that make sense for you. and actually act out of love. And when you act out of love, you're actually challenging and you're standing in defiance of impermanence, because love definitely weighs heavier than a lot of other things. So even if obstacles arise and you don't know what to do, just keep doing anyway, and have a play at it. Have a play at writing new stories, new narratives, and let's see what that will take you. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Steffi, Rob, and Louis. And I'll pass it now to Agatha, so they continue the Youth Parliament.
The one on the right. So, we're more than halfway through. So we've discussed the state of democracy. We explored in this very inspirational session the power of imagination. And now we're going to look into the next step, which is what are some of the solutions that are actually working? In so many of these discussions, we talk about problems and issues that we have. But here at the Youth Parliament, we're all about action. So today, we're bringing you 4 concrete initiatives, tested approaches that are already building democratic power in so many different ways. And as you listen to these incredible ideas, I invite you to think about which of these excite you. Which of these would you like to contribute to? And we're going to start with our first incredible speaker, Nate Wilborn. Nate is a New Zealand-based youth and environmental advocate and speaker. He's a 2025 and 2026 semi-finalist for Young New Zealander of the Year and is recognized for his incredible work in environmental and youth advocacy and empowerment across the globe. So please put your hands together for Nate.
Oh, kia ora koutou. Hello, everybody. It is great to be here in Paris. I'm a little bit jet lagged still, so please bear with me. But it is so incredible to be here with you all today talking about youth and democracy. So back home in New Zealand, my work is surrounding young people. How can we engage young people in democracy, climate justice, especially in a time of, the current context of the globe at the minute seems like it's, pretty unhopeful. There's genocides in Palestine, Sudan, Congo. We're changing, polarities and a transition of polarities. It's a pretty tough time to be a young person, essentially. So looking at how can we then change this narrative that the media and politicians are throwing at us, trying to divide us from left to right, workers and those who own the means of productions, and actually how can we unite together as young people, as people of our societies, and actually take action in democracy? But most importantly, how do we stay hopeful in times of crisis? So in the Toolbox, the Unity Narrative Studio, we're going to be looking at how do we stay united? What types of messaging and narratives can we have? Positivity, hopefulness, how to be optimistic, looking at how we can also transition all of these ideas that we create together, the solutions, the narratives, and transform this into mobilization and action. Because now has never been a more important time to stay hopeful. You look back at history when there's all these, social justice and civil justice movements, when the entire world was against them like it is today. Power structures were against young people, women, people of color. They found a way to overcome these challenges and fight for change. So why can't we? So that's why I'm super stoked to be here today talking about the Unity Narrative Studio. So yeah, come up later. I think there's a meeting afterwards, after the panel. We'll be discussing about how we can then, from the event today, go ahead and co-create these solutions. We can go back to our communities all across the world. So yeah, vote for Unity Narrative Studio. Probably the best toolbox out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nate, for your inspirational pitch and for kicking ass off with this part. So we're going to go to our second incredible speaker, Mathilde Villot. She's a French public law jurist, a feminist activist, and a gender equality advocate who is known for her work addressing sexism and sexual violence in French politics. Mathilde is one of the co-founders of the Me Too Politique movement in France and a French coordinator of the My Voice, My Choice campaign. Please welcome Mathilde.
Hello, everyone, and thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here. Today, I will focus on the My Voice, My Choice campaign to describe the big victory we have impulsed in European Union. As you know, maybe, My Voice, My Choice is now implemented in European Union. It is a European citizen initiative which has led this big victory. We gathered 1.2 million signatures to allow a person who wants to have an abortion and cannot have one in their country to beneficiate from the Solidarity Fund. This huge victory, we have got it by constructing, and this is what I will want to develop today, a cause needs to be constructed like really thoroughly. The cause of the abortion has the beneficiary, the quality to unite feminists all over Europe. This is a fundamental quality. First of all, we could have other causes that could divide us, etc., from political ways or regional ways. It's not the case. Abortion is a perfect cause to unite ourselves. And then abortion is a point of contact with our enemies. Fascists all over the world are trying to reduce women's rights. They are trying to extend their power under the margins. And we must unite against them. We don't need to, and we must not refuse the contact with them like they are coming to us. We have to go to them. And so, yeah, I would like to explain that to you. I will be thrilled to also explain how we can create a coalition. In France, we united several thousand people who worked with us. We used to unite every week. It means that to create a movement like that, we have to prepare each week every meeting with a degree of precision which leads everybody to feel in the cause and which leads everybody to participate. That's the first thing. So in the unification of the cause, we also had that in the struggle we used to lead. And then in the confrontation, we also, on the field, went to the cities of the far-right municipalities in France. We've been there, like there are almost 10, and now a little bit more since the last elections. We've been there to remind every woman there that they are not alone, and I'm going to finish that later. Stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Mathilde, and how telling that we finished off at reminding women that they're not alone. That it's a very powerful way to wrap up this pitch. It's really incredible to hear about My Voice, My Choice. I remember following every single step and seeing with more and more excitement as the campaign was developing, as there were more and more wins that were achieved. We're going to move to our third presenter, who's Florian Gauthier. Florian has been working for over 10 years in the creation of digital services with a strong social impact. He's a committed entrepreneur serving the public interests, a co-founder of the NGO lareponse.tech, which created Asquera, an AI tool that makes fact-checking as simple as sending a message, which has been widely deployed in France and in countries across Africa. So please put your hands together for Florian.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Okay, so before starting, our mission, who we are an NGO, we are a non-profit, we are a community of collective, like you and I, of 25 per person, that work into one mission, democratize fact-checking to make it a daily habit. Basically, we all live in a jungle of misinformation and disinformation in social media. And the idea is like, what if we could check information in just 1 second and have trusted sources to do so? So we created an AI, but an AI that is way, way different from the one you know. Because it's an AI that only checks trusted sources. So when you ask it a question, it will check in over 500 trusted sources in the world, in 81 countries. And the trusted sources, they respect standards. What is the trusted sources? They respect European and international standards in terms of neutrality, seriousness of the team, and impartiality. So you ask a question to Vera, she will check on those sources and synthesize the answers in 3 seconds and cite its sources, so you can check yourself. And one big difference in if you ask a question to Vera, but she cannot find any information, it will say, I could not find any information to verify your facts, which is a massive difference with ChatGPT and other AI that hallucinate because their mission is to reply to you no matter what. Third difference, Vera is accessible to everyone for free. It's just a phone number. You add it to your contact list, and then you can text it on WhatsApp, or on Instagram, or you can give it a phone call, and it will reply to you. In 12 months, we received 500,000 questions to Vera. Oh, wow. And the metric we're the most proud of is that when people try Vera, they're still using it 6 weeks after. Like 1/3 of them are still using it. So we have a retention, so we have a habit forming of verifying information when you see it. And if I have 1 more minute, what is crazy is not on purpose, we manage to analyze those questions. They are all anonymous. We don't store any personal data. And by looking at those questions, we build an observatory of this information. We can see and map this information on health, on geopolitics, on rumors, and detect fake news before everyone else. So if we partner with the right media and institution, we can do pre-bunking, and we can kill fake news before they're too big. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Florian. And what a powerful example of the use of AI for social impact. And finally, last but not least, we have Marisol Manfredi. Marisol is an Argentinian eco-feminist and a PhD researcher in sustainable development and climate change in Italy. Her work examines the dark side of innovation, using the Monsanto case to show how corporate power normalize and sustain environmentally harmful practices. She has been active in feminist movements all over Argentina for over a decade and is currently engaged in trans-feminist and environmental movements in Italy. So please welcome Marisol.
Thank you very much. What an inspiring place. Well, today we have been talking here about democracy, and that democracy is not only about voting or elections or parliaments, but it's also about living experiences. So the experience I want to bring here today to you is a lived experience from the city of Pisa in Italy that you may all know because of the tower. But another very interesting thing about Pisa is its vibrant political life. So 60% of the people that live in this city are students. There are 3 big universities, so it's full of students, so the political life is so vibrant. There are collectives of everything, a collective for the university, a collective for the trans-feminist cause, a collective for the environmental cause. It's very active. But what is the problem when you have so many students, so much compromise with their ideologies and political values, divided? You have millions of collectives that doesn't talk to each other because they have different ways of organizing, of seeing, of doing, So it's a very divided, unfortunately, political space, which is something that we have seen in the left spaces, I guess, around the world. But what happened, and this is what I want to bring here today, that we said we need hope to wake up every day and resist. After the 7th of October, the Palestinian cause unified us all. We took the university, we occupied the university through something that we call the acampada, which basically meant that we all took our tents, camp tents, to the university, and we camped there for 1 complete month, asking to the university to stop all the agreements they had with the Israeli companies and Israeli universities. And there, it didn't matter if you were from this collective or the other collective, or your ideology was Gramsci or Foucault or what. We were all together there doing assemblies every night, doing food for everyone in huge pots, having emotional assemblies where we could cry, having workshops of poems, and doing a lot of things that really unified the thing. So I think that a good learning from this experience is that for democracy to work, maybe it's not, you don't only need people engaging. You need to give them and give us a bigger cause to sit together in the table. When we understand what is the shared cause and the shared purpose we have for fighting for, I think that trust emerges. So I'm going to talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marisol, for wrapping up the pitches and also for reminding us about the importance of giving people a cause and putting them together in a community. In the opening with Ziad Majed, we talked about what is democracy and how does it actually look like. And one of the core elements he talked about was representation and participation and a possibility to give a space to amplify the voices to people, to groups, to causes that are normally underrepresented. And I think what was very striking in all of your pitches is that you all stand for an underrepresented group or cause. I mean, Nate, you talked about youth. Mathilde, you talk about women. Florian, I think for you this is really facts, right? It's about representation of facts. And Marisol, you talked about the power of students. So I'm wondering, if we're talking about representation, if we're talking about unity, how does unity actually look like in that democracy of the future that we just imagined? Maybe Nate, do you want to go first?
Totally. I think first and foremost, the most important thing is participation in democracy, ensuring that everybody, no matter your age, your background, your gender, where you work, your ideology, that you have a say in democracy, right? You go out, you turn up, you vote, you engage in protest, you find ways to make your voice and your opinion heard, because that way we can ensure that everybody throughout society have their say and that, our parliaments, our governments actually represent the people and that the power of people, are the ones that are behind that. I think it's also part of making, democracy accessible to everybody throughout society. A bit of a shout out to Make It 16 in New Zealand, who are the campaign to lowering the voting age to 16, finding ways to, help empower people across the globe, throughout societies, from different, minority groups, to, really have their say and make sure that their voices and that their lived experiences are heard. So that, I guess democracy is a true representation and reflection of everybody.
Thank you so much, Nate. And Mathilde, you mentioned the last sentence that you mentioned in your pitch was talking about how we need to remind women that they're not alone. I think it's a very powerful reminder in the campaign as well.
Yeah, totally. And I want to go in the sense of what you just said. I think that My Voice, My Choice was a great example of direct democracy because it was a petition. And it is not surprising that it is a feminist movement that is leading to transform democracy, I think. Like using the new tools which are proposed, and it worked, actually. I think we lead to innovations, but also we innovation. Innovation. I've worked for a long time in the National Assembly in France. I've seen how the violence against women is insidious. Like even elected women, they turn to be so tired by fighting into their own party that they leave. We cannot imagine what it is until we have seen it. So representative democracy is not representative because at the end all the margins are so tired they finish to leave. So I think one of the main corrective we have to put in place is that we have to build a really strong direct democracy, participative democracy, to make people involved all the time and to finally avoid that only white heterosexual male are going to lead the world. So this is really into the constitutional and democratic mechanism we have to work on to put correctives. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm looking at you, Marisol. I saw you're nodding with a lot of enthusiasm about it's not just about the white older men that we need to include in democracy.
Heterosexuals.
I'm gonna go to you because you talked about the power of giving a cause to a community and a power of mobilization around that. It would be great to hear a little bit more about how would that actually look like in the democracy of the future.
Well, what would be the cause, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, if we were to implement these ideas, if we were to actually give the voice to the students, to the communities, how would that look like?
Well, I guess, at least from the experience that I lived, is like it's a completely different method and way of acting. I think that we new generations are trying to leave a little bit behind these old ways of the heterosexual men that has the power and vertical way of guiding how is the way to go. In this regard, we were all students having these assemblies at 9 every night and very shy, saying like, we should do this or we should do that, and giving space for everyone to speak and trying to leave behind this idea of the militant that, you know, has I mean, I'm Argentinian, I love Che Guevara, but a little bit this idea of like we have one idol to follow, and this idol always is this heterosexual white man. So this idea of a more collective building of our realities, of our cause, and on the way we want to pursue this. I see this in new generations, and it's where I put my hope in.
Thank you so much. And I mean, a few of you talked about innovation and new approaches and different way of looking at things. So I want to go to Florian now to talk a little bit about, I mean, you talked about use of an AI that is a very different approach that I think a lot of people consider. And AI has been a very popular topic at ChangeNOW. Some of the most popular sessions we've seen so far. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the tool that you developed, and also what role do you see it has in democracy?
Yeah, totally. I think first and foremost that democracy starts with facts. As a society, it's impossible to act together if we cannot agree on what facts is, what truth is. If I don't believe into climate change, why would I act on it, right? So I think this is one of the things, and this is why disinformation and misinformation has been ranked the first and second biggest threat to humanity, short-term biggest threat to humanity in 2024, 2025, and now 2026. It's because we need to act together. And of course, AI is one of the reasons we need to act even faster, because AI, now it's so easy to create fake news, fake generative content, fake video, fake image, fake audio, fake everything. And it's harder and harder to understand what is true and what is not. And politics know exactly those tools and can produce hundreds and thousands of contents to bias opinion and to poison the AI that we use every day. We did an experiment asking thousands of questions to ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and all of them. And the first thing that shocked is they reply into 99.9% of the time, even if there is no information available. It's crazy, right? And so they spread misinformation with so much conviction that you tend to believe into it. And now when we see in college and university, people use it. Teens, kids use ChatGPT to fact check the teacher. And ChatGPT is using Reddit, right? Yeah. YouTube to reply, right? So it's amazing for an apple pie or for coding and or many things, but with facts, it's a poison. So that's why we created Vera, another AI, but to fight the other one, right? Yeah. But it's very, very different. I explained, it's only trusted sources. It can say, I don't know. And I think one thing I didn't talk about is the observatory. So we start to analyze those questions, and now we realize that we have a gold mine of disinformation spreading. And so we are starting to work with media that don't have any money, by the way, and don't have any resources, because Meta, Facebook stopped funding fact checkers around the world. And so basically we help them detect rumors, detect disinformation, so they can produce content immediately to react. And then, yeah. And then we don't have political debates that spread misinformation, and millions of people listen to them, and the next day they go to vote for, not for facts, but for lies. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's funny to me that you mentioned Reddit. I remember reading an article where they were looking at if people actually realize where the sources of ChatGPT are, and it was 70 or 80% of Reddit. With a lot of people actually not even knowing what Reddit is. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions around AI. And there are surely also a lot of misconceptions in all of your work. I mean, in the way that you approach your work and the kind of people that you interact with. Mathilde, I wanted to go to you because you touched upon that a little bit in your pitch. and the level of misconception and misunderstanding that was surrounding My Voice, My Choice. I mean, there was such a calculated campaign against it as well. A lot of politicians, a lot of organizations being very particularly focused on that. So it would be great to hear a little bit more about the struggles and the misconceptions that you've experienced in the campaign.
Yeah, totally. I'm not sure it's exactly a misconception. I think that there were groups that were against abortion, and they conceived it exactly the right way. Like this project wanted to make abortion available for every woman in Europe. So, yeah, there were. So they just fought against that, but they used methods that used, of course, misconception. Like they used lies, they used they void our message. It's the first time that how do you say, they put posters of dead babies in the Parliament, European Parliament. So. Yeah, you know, in this kind of tools which is make to shock people and to arise their sensibility, I think we maybe speak so all the time about false information, about dictator, about people. I think are more sensitive to that now. They are more well informed of that now. Like in the 70s, when in the United States, they used to like send little babies to people, etc. It could shock people. I think now we kind of, we advanced a bit, and now it works less. Actually, they're losing. I think they are losing. I think it just takes a lot of time, and we are in a long death and painful for everybody. But yeah, and thanks to the work on information, of course, and yeah.
What I found particularly impressive about My Voice, My Choice was the level of coordination, not just between the different organizations, but also between countries and cities. This is something that is one of the most important, I think, aspects of coordinating a campaign.
If I can add something about that, it's thanks to an amazing organization which is called the Institute 8 of March, which comes from Slovenia, and which is led by Nika Kovac. And they used to make an extraordinary work of coordination between us, but also they let us really free between us to have, like, you know, in France with Spain, we had a very tight relationship because we have a cultural common bias, etc. So that they let us really free to organize our struggle as we wanted. And yeah, it worked really well in, I don't know how, really fluid, like it was a really fluid relationship. And we trusted each other a lot. And yeah, it was really a rich cooperation with all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. We talked about coordination, and I started thinking about what you said, Marisol, in your pitch, which is, you know, we had tents and we had things, and there were so many things that were required. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what does it actually take to make this happen, because, you know, this whole entire discussion is about practical solutions, initiatives that are also meant here to inspire our audience, to engage our audience. So it would be great to hear a little bit more about the story. You know, how did you go from nothing to that? I mean, it's a very impressive initiative.
Yeah, well, actually, the answer is it's very simple. It was just coordination. We all had a tent in our houses. We all had a camp somewhere. We just needed to coordinate among the collectives that, as I said before, usually worked in a very atomized and separated way. But here it was just a matter of like, look, what is going on? This is and there was a clear cause, because we are students. We all know that University of Pisa had agreements with Israel institutions. So the cause was really clear for all us. And of course, I mean, for justice, for all. So it was simple. Like, I mean, for example, myself, I went with the tent to the university. I put it somewhere where everyone was there. I saw some people cooking. I went there. Do we need something? Yes, we need onions. Okay, I go to the supermarket next to it. So it was all on the going. I mean, the assemblies were important also to understand what we needed, because we also raised money. So we organized some parties there. So the continuous assembly of every night was fundamental for maintaining the organization and the cleaning and all these kind of things. But apart from that, I would say that it's very simple. If we want to go and occupy now Sorbonne University, it only takes, a little bit of coordination, and then things just flow. So I think it's easier than what we think. We just need the coordination. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to go to you, Nate, because I think it would be great to understand a little bit better the context that you're operating in, and the reality of what it actually means to be a youth advocate. I think that's something that a lot of people in the audience are facing every day.
Totally. A little bit of context I forgot to mention in my pitch is that, so back home, I'm the founder and co-director of Gen Z Aotearoa, New Zealand's largest youth-led organisation, entirely led by people who are Gen Z, under the age of 22 years old. The work that we've done was help mobilise about 200,000 young people in New Zealand to go to climate protests, engage to vote, attend other events, petitions, panels. So the work that we do is essentially being the home of tomorrow's change makers, leaders, entrepreneurs and creatives in New Zealand. Helping, mobilise and connect, empower young people, young leaders and youth organisations. That's the work that I do, essentially. And I guess, with that comes a lot of responsibility to kind of help empower young people. Using my lived experience I've had at home. I was 8 years old when I started off in the youth conservation space, planted my very first tree at 8 years old. And since then I've been, planting trees and advocating for nature across New Zealand. So it kind of comes with a responsibility to then help, how do I share my lived experience with other young people? And the way that we do that is through social media, which I think is really important to touch on this panel, is the power that social media has to create change. And when we use social media correctly, it is pretty much unstoppable, right? Like, it has got so much potential when you can have a hopeful narrative, when you can tell someone's story, when you can use a way to help, educate, empower, and inspire people to go out into the streets, go attend a protest, right? So there's a lot of the work, which I really want to, touch on being a youth advocate is, in 2026, right? Social media and AI are probably two of the biggest things in our lifetimes. With the generation of social media, we grew up with Instagram and Snapchat. And now, looking at how can we use hopeful narratives on these sorts of platforms to help transition people's lives and to help mobilize people, most importantly.
Thank you so much, Nate. What a powerful way to take us to the next part. So I want to go to Florian to talk a little bit more about Vera. I mean, you mentioned that it's been used many, many times, and people actually come back to it, which is great. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about how it's being used or how you think it could be used. What role do you see for a tool like this one in the democracy of the future?
Yeah, totally. So we received like 500,000 questions. It's crazy because we're quite bad at communication, but we're super lucky in social media. We launched a video a year ago and reached 2 million views on LinkedIn. Like, what? And suddenly many countries start choosing it, and we're like, oh, it's crazy, we have a power. And we realized by doing some research, youth, elder people, senior people, we try to really that we realize like all of them have the same problem. They struggle to distinguish what is true, what is bad, whether you are from far right wing or far left wing or in the middle, whatever. All of them have a problem. They don't know what is true and what is not, and they can, and so Vera is kind of the answer to that, a tool that is just talking about fact, not opinion, and is not trying to convince you. It's just saying like, okay, I understand your opinion. Here is one sources that chat about it, and this is another source that chat about it. And I think what people like is not being judged. It's just a tool anyway, just an AI. So they can be very honest. And sometimes we can see like people getting angry at it, like I don't like these sources. Oh yes, I understand your opinion. So here's another sources that might have a different perspective. But all of those sources are trusted sources again. So I think we just reply to a problem that people have. Being able to fact check information and know that it's not going to give you some weird sources or weird information. And I think more and more people understand that AI is not really reliable to news and to to factor overall and to health. Like it's crazy when you see like ChatGPT, we ask it like thousands of questions about health as well. Is this treatment good? And it replies with pharmaceutical companies. The sources is using to reply to you about the efficiency of a treatment. And people ask it, is it true that collagen is great for my skin? Is paracetamol a good contraceptive? This is a question we had in Africa, for instance. So there is two problems. First, like, thank God they ask it to Vera. And the second thing is like, if you don't know what people are asking, how can you fight against it? You know, if you're a health institution, how can you actually reply to people if you don't know the rumors that circulate in their own little bubbles?
Yeah.
And so I think, and I think the last, and but not least, is the fact that we are non-profits. We are volunteers. All the sources are available on the website. So you can just scroll all the sources and see, like, and even say, hey, there is not these sources, you should add it. So we try to build in public, try to be very transparent. We show, like, the small funding we had, Ministry of Education, for instance, like we show the amount is very little, but it paid at the cost for a server and everything. And the transparency, the non-profit, this is why people use Vera and use it more and more.
Thank you so much. And I loved what you said about how can we know what people want if we don't know what they're asking. This reminded me a little bit of when Brexit happened, and the day before the vote, one of the most popular questions on Google was, what is Brexit? This is one of those situations where, I mean, you need to be out there. You need to understand what people are asking.
Yeah, I can add a bit on this. Like, so we find amazing partner in Africa because everyone uses WhatsApp there. So we have a free service available on WhatsApp, just a phone number. So in Africa, it was great. And actually, Vera spread itself to Africa. And so we work with a local partner, not to be like French people are going to tell you the truth, but actual partner and media from Africa and Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire, and we work with them during the election. And so we were analyzing the question people were asking to Vera, again, no personal data, just anonymous question. And for instance, like 2 days before the election, massive spike of question about, is it true that the ONU, I don't know how to say, yeah, ONU? Yeah, whatever, is going to cancel the election. Like, what? Why would you vote if the ONU is going to cancel the election? You won't. So this is key to have eyes everywhere and to understand people's threat of misinformation.
Yeah, so powerful. And you talked about the importance of trust, right? And trust is one of the things that when we talk about democracy is a very, very important concern, because we do have a declining trust in institutions. We have a declining trust in democracy. This is particularly present among the younger generations. I've seen across multiple countries, there are more and more people that think that the authoritarian regime is increasingly a better solution, right? So trust is so central to the way we design our democracy. And I want to go to Mathilde because I think in that campaign, what was really impressive to me was the level of trust that people were putting in the process and the level of commitment and the level of dedication that was present. I'm wondering, what was your experience in the campaign itself of how people approach this? Because it is very much, it's a European Citizens Initiative. It's a format that's been around for many, many years that a lot of people don't actually know about. But it became a lot more than that, right? It started with the mission of collecting more than 1 million signatures from particular countries with particular numbers, but it became a movement, essentially.
Yes, totally. I think it became a movement because it was, as I said in an introductive speech, really clear about its aim and function, like to unify the women between them, and also to mark a margin, a limit between other power that wants to take over the women's bodies and the person's bodies. And we were actually helped, maybe, I think, and that's something I think we can see in the climate change struggles. For example, the emergencies feeling that we have to fight for something which is coming to us, help people to mobilize a lot. And during this campaign for My Voice, My Choice, it's true that it was like the second election of Trump during this, and actually abortion took a large place in this campaign. We spoke a lot about that, and we actually saw what is happening to the US citizens. So, of course, everybody is, and there is also something of solidarity. Like to send a message to the Americans, like you're not alone. We are just, continuing to build another world, and soon you will get back to us. This is something which was really like messages which were really often sent by the people we met, like, I'm afraid for what is going to happen in Europe, but also my feeling I so hurt, but what is happening everywhere, like not only in the US, for example, but also like the women's condition everywhere in the world. So yeah, like I think it was a really beautiful campaign for that, like to see all of the different feelings that can come into one cause and to improve the world. And actually, it was not easy to sign the petition, because it was not only a petition, it was something with information that were collected on the European Commission website, with a lot of things in information you have to put on. So it's a real success to have collected all of those signatures. It was, yeah, really a joyful and emotional moment for us. Yeah. But also, maybe if I can just have 1 minute, you spoke about onions earlier. I think we can do a metaphor about onions, because a struggle is not only like something which does not happen in reality. It happens like doing things together. It happens like, for example, in France, we formed a lot of people, we media trained them, but also we formed them like to, I don't know, rent a tent because we were having an event. And when you come into a struggle and you're young or not young, but you've never done that, you can be a little bit afraid of, I don't know what to do. I don't know how we do the things. Actually, there is no manner. There is plenty of manners. You have to do things. And so, like, having a movement which is like sharing and just going to one point, really clear points, actually, it helps people to feel the way to join and to do things the way they want to. I think, yeah, when you want to do something, but you do it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've seen in a lot of cases that one of the most powerful, successful ways to engage people is actually to give them a small action, and then to give them another action, and then to give them another action. And this way you build a movement. You don't just throw information and facts and data at them. You actually show them how things can be done, which is exactly what we also are trying to do here. Nate, I want to go back to you, because you talked about incredible organization that you founded, and with everybody being under 22, right? So very much this new generation thinking. You talked about social media, and we talked about how does that influence the vision of democracy of young people. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more as to what are some of the ideas that you're seeing that are circulating? What are some of the visions for how the system should look like? How is the new generation, how is Gen Z seeing what the system should be replying to, how it should be working? Are you seeing a lot of different perspectives? Is there a common vision? I mean, this is all something that I think would be super interesting to learn a bit more about.
Totally. I guess, yeah, Gen Z are pretty unhappy with the rise of the far right, fascism across the globe. And that kind of translates back to what I was saying before about, how can you stay hopeful as a young person when, our governments are, not working in our favor? We give them tax money to look after us, to protect us, but that money is going to, fund war and genocide overseas. So I guess, yeah, looking at how, our feedback on social media as young people are looking like, trying to find a way, they want to have a future, right? And they want to stay hopeful. And how can you stay hopeful and have this, futuristic thinking when all these things are going on in the world right now? So I guess the kind of common theme with that is looking at how can we then, engage young people more in democracy so that we actually have our say. Looking at, like, in a New Zealand context, right, when it comes to voter turnout in democracy and in elections, we see that people who are over the age of 65 have a 98% turnout in elections, whereas people who are between 18 and 25 have about a 70% turnout. And those people who are enrolled to vote. And there are about 1/3 of young people in New Zealand that are not enrolled to vote, meaning that they cannot have a say in democracy and in elections. Looks like, therefore our governments kind of more represent the older generation who we know, tend to be more into right-wing politics and populism, which is not, a reflection of our generation and what we want to see in our future. So kind of bringing it back to social media then is looking at how, when we create content, when we learn and when we I don't know, organize protests, we promote protests on social media, we see a lot more engagement with young people who are commenting, saying, you know, I'm really keen to attend, than there are with old people, which I guess then correlates to more of a theme that we see in young people who are more into, you know, left-wing politics, at least I guess in the kind of sphere that I'm in. But then even the young people who are kind of more involved on the other, like the other side of the spectrum with right-wing politics and populism, a lot of that comes down to, you know, misinformation and education, and I guess where they're getting that information from, which a lot of time does come from AI, but also unethical AI sources. When they do Google something on ChatGPT and it gives them a Reddit-based result. So yeah, how can we use social media, therefore, to actually educate young people using actual, you know, information, trustworthy information, factual information, so that they can then have their say in democracy, show out to elections, attend protests and rallies, which, yeah, I guess that's kind of the pretty crucial work that we are doing.
Thank you so much, Nate. I think these are really, really interesting insights, and I love that we're building bridges between the different solutions. I think this is exactly what we need, right? We need a combination of solutions. There's no one right answer, and I know it would be great if we had just one answer to solve all of the problems, but reality is a lot more nuanced. It's a combination of different solutions. We're nearing towards the end, and I want to listen to all of you, and we're going to start with Marisol. What is one key thing, one recommendation that you think we really need in democracy? I mean, we talked about what democracy is. We talked about the main challenges. We imagined the future of democracy. I think it would be great to hear from all of you, based on your work, your experiences, your own perspectives. What is your recommendation, whether that's at the local, national, international level? This is up to you. But one thing that you really think we should be mobilizing more people around?
Difficult question, but I think that I would go with, so I really think we are in a crisis of democracy. I think there is a crisis of representation for sure. In my country, it's mandatory to vote, but in a lot of countries it's not. And if we see the rates of people going to vote, which is the only moment that you would say I am exerting my right of democracy, is very low. So I think that departing from here, I would say that the most important thing is I would stick with this thing of the common cause. So a feeling of belonging, that we belong to the same generation of not even generation, but people that wants, you know, to change things, to stop seeing right governments and rights being violated. So my little advice here, or my little toolkit would be, for example, in the feminist movement in Argentina, we had a pañuelo, a scarf, a green scarf that you will put in your, whatever you take with you. And this little thing, it gave you, you know, you go into the bus and you see some other people with the, and this already gave an empowerment of like, we are here together, we have a common cause. So a very simple thing, but very powerful. I think this could work.
Thank you so much. I think this is brilliant because it talks exactly about how do we create a community, how do we create safe spaces for ourselves and for people to recognize themselves as well. Florian, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say like I really believe into citizen-driven public services. Basically, I think there is a tremendous amount of skills and power and ideas and creativity amongst us, and you would be massively surprised that if you ask around, would you like to work on this topic? People would say yes. It's been 1.5 years we're working for free, just for a cause, for misinformation. Basically, we have a job, and then we come home, and at 9, we start working. And on the weekend, we start working together. And it's been 1.5 years we're doing that. And we're so happy about it. And I think people want to act. Sometimes they're a bit tired of their job. So just like, if you feel the hinge, just ask around and create a team and go for it. There are so many tools to speed your journey up. So yeah, it's time.
Thank you so much, Mathilde.
Yeah, I adore your ideas. I just want to speak about an experiment that has been put in France, which was called the Citizen Collective Convention about climate, which people were, like 200 people were drawn of lots. So everybody was represented, different classes, different colors, different genres. And everybody, they drafted a law which has not been passed because of Macron, but it was a very, very, very important law. Actually, if it was very optimistic and it was very well done. So I think that direct democracy is really a powerful tool.
Thank you. Nate?
I think participation, because that therefore translates into representation, which means that when you're a young person who participates in democracy, you know, parties have therefore got to pitch to you why you should be voting for them, right? They've got to have a reason for young people to want to stay in the country, for them to want to, vote for them, which then, I guess, gives us a little bit of hope, right, that actually political parties and politicians are therefore actually going to be working for young people and have a reason for you to want to, vote for them. They're trying to get your attention. Just getting people out, voting, attending protests are the two biggest things, in my opinion. Particularly young people who we know are underrepresented in democracies across the world. Yet, as the generation that are yet to inherit all of these decisions that are being made today, all of these crises, it's up to us, right, to have a say so that actually we can have a future that represents us. Because after all, we are the future, aren't we? And, it's our decision to, kind of help shape the world that we want to live and leave for our grandchildren.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you. I'm hearing community, I'm hearing participation, I'm hearing direct democracy. What an inspiring space to be in. Thank you so much to all of you for all of your incredible work. I love that we've had so many different solutions, but such complementary solutions. That's so, so important. Thank you very much to all of you for listening to our wonderful speakers. I'm going to hand over to Mohammed, who's going to be coming onto stage very soon. And we're going to dive a little bit more into what these solutions actually are and how you can get involved. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for hanging around here. I would like to start with a quote of one of my favorite philosophers and authors, Angela Davis, when she said, "I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept." We've heard inspiring stories on the stage and seen what's already working around the world. And now it's your turn. Over the past 2 hours, the room have done something remarkable. We have reimagined what democracy looked like. We've heard from people building it from the ground up. And we've challenged the system that keep us out of reach. But a youth parliament without a mandate is just a conversation. So let's make it an action. We are designing 4 tools, practicals, deployable frameworks that one of you can help build starting today. Let me walk you through them quickly. The first tool is about democracy in your city kit, a hands-on guide for everyone who wants to strengthen their civic participation around your neighborhood, because this is where democracy starts. Our second tool is Truth and Trust Network. It's a community-driven framework that counter misinformation, verify transparency, and build shared foundation of trust, managed by humans and not bots. And our third tool is Unity Narrative Studio, a creative toolkit to build bridges across divides, craft unifying stories, and rebuild the shared imagination that polarized has fractured. And our fourth tool is Guide to Building Coalition, and it's a practical guide playbook for getting people, organizations, movements together aligned. So soon you will see a QR code on the screen. And we are going to vote for two tools. The ones you would be willing to show up for. Not the most inspiring one only, but the ones that you can actually help us building. So this QR code on the screen that you see now, you have 2 votes, so use them well. We will collect all the votes and come back to you at around, after the next panel, at around 11:45 or 11:48. Let's see how the time goes. And then we'll come back with the results, and then we will announce the winning tools, and then move straight to action. So now it's your turn. And now I will bring the mic to Mael for the next panel. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a really long session. My name is Mael, I'm a Theodox economist. I work at the editorial team at ChangeNOW. And so thank you so much for the panel and for Mohamed. It was great. We heard about concrete initiatives, tools, and practices that already work. But now I would like to ask you a deeper question. It's coming actually from a quote that is the favorite quote of our next speaker, Maya Sayed. She's actually the one that inspired me this whole discussion. And the quote is from Audre Lorde, and she wrote, "The master tools will never dismantle the master's house." So, if the system around us is built on concentration of power, exclusion, extraction, colonialism, and competition, can democracy really flourish without changing the economy behind it? So, to answer this question, really hard, I'm really happy to welcome 2 speakers who work across movements, institutions, and communities, and who help us to think not only about what is broken, but also about what can be built differently. So I'm going to soon welcome Maya Sayed. She's a feminist, economist, scholar, volunteer, advocate from Pakistan. She's engaged in issues related to global financial architecture, gender, and climate justice. She's currently based in Berlin, working for the Third World Network and doing a lot of boxing. And Jason Nerdy, he's deeply engaged in building the social and solidarity economy at local, national, and international levels. He's general delegate for Repass Europe. He lives in Florence, supports CSA initiatives, mutualist finance, and common-oriented community. And also playing clarinet in a street band and teaching acro-yoga. Thank you so much for you to join me on this discussion. Yeah, take the mic. So, Maria, I'm going to start by you. As your work is really mainly focused on global finance architecture, with credit rating agencies, debt, and climate justice. So for people in the room that aren't really familiar with this topic, can you explain, it's hard, in the simple terms, how today's economic system is no longer neutral, but political? And maybe you can speak about the role of colonialism in distributing voices, risk, and power on it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mael. And it's a pleasure to be here again. And thank you, everyone, for joining. So I will try to break the whole international financial architecture into simpler terms. And for that, Mael, you need to help me with the French word. And a lot of you would know this word. It's called croque monsieur, the famous sandwich, French sandwich. So if you would have to picture the financial architecture, I would like you to picture the sandwich. So you have the bread, you have the ham, you have the cheese, you have the bechamel sauce, right? And then you have the soggy bread at the bottom. So the top layer is basically the layer that's the most valuable one, and that's when people think that, oh, this is the perfect one, and that's how it's put together. That's the financial system we're talking about. And that's when we're talking about the ingredients. So we're talking about the interest rates, and this is one of the levers that is used to dictate the capital markets. The second, we're talking about the currency hierarchy. Complicated term, but in simpler words, is basically the currency in which most of the countries are borrowing. And then you have the borrowing markets themselves. And that's how the world or the financial system is being run by the markets, institutions, financial institutions, and having most of the say, while the soggy bread at the bottom is the global south countries, the communities, the normal people every day, and what they're getting in return is the public budget cuts, shrinking budgets, and then debt, which is at the core of it. And I think one of the famous saying by Thomas Sankara, who was a revolutionary leader who was fighting against financial imperialism and was also assassinated for that matter from Burkina Faso. And he said something really strong. He said that if you have to take a look at debt, you have to go back to its origins, which roots from colonialism. And when you have to think about how that is affecting the system, you have to think about it as a way of reconquest, because that's what debt is currently doing right now in its current form. It's subjugating development and creating economies as financial slaves. And that's when the democracy is disrupted. That's when there's no more participation that's coming from the citizens, but rather they are the rules of the game being played by the financial institutions and markets. And I think that's where the question has to come about whose voice is being represented, whose voice is being actually at the decision-making table, and who is getting to say or being represented in the right way for the problems that they're facing at the bottom. And therefore, we have to rethink about the recipe of the sandwich in the end.
The croque-monsieur. Thank you so much, Maria. Now I'm turning to you, Jason. As your work is deeply rooted into social and solidarity economy, cooperative and ethical finance, which is really linked to what just Maria mentioned. Could you start from the local level and tell us concretely how social and solidarity economy differs from the mainstream economy, the usual one, and what are the main challenges that come with that?
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm really pleased and grateful to follow the conversations that took place before, and also this metaphor. I don't have such a juicy metaphor to counteract. If I had to think of food, maybe I think of a very rich fruit salad, where each ingredient, each part has a very cultural history coming behind, and a relational history, which is what we've been speaking about here, creating trust through relations, and through that, creating the economy that serves our needs. So that's basically what we're talking about when we look at an alternative system to the croque-monsieur. How can we create not one, but many different alternative systems and many different futures, therefore, that come out of this? You've been sitting here for a long morning, so I would like to take 1 minute of my time just to ask you a few questions and to see where you position yourselves in the change that we need to do. For instance, where do you buy food every day? Do you go to the supermarket? Can I have a show of hands? Do you use the supermarket? Be honest, we all do. Do you go to a farmer's market or a local grocery? Okay. Do you go directly to a farmer or even cultivate the food yourself? One courageous. Okay, so there's many different ways, of course, and collective ways are the ones that we in social solidarity economy try to promote. Same thing for energy. Do you choose your energy provider? Are you looking for green energy? Or are you even part of a collective energy production where you are producer and consumer at the same time? Where's your bank account? do you have a bank account in the bank that gives you the best rate or the least costs? Or have you looked for a ethical or cooperative bank that serves the territory, the collective? These are the questions that we need to ask ourselves and also discuss among ourselves. And then from these, we can create an alternative way of addressing things that doesn't necessarily always pass through money. And that's where we're trapped. We're trapped in the money system. And we think that everything needs to be solved with money. But we have many other ways, and historically, humanity has invented and created so many different ways of what is below the croque monsieur, all the garnishing, all the ingredients that were needed to create it, all the care that was necessary to make it, that does not go through money. And that is the part that needs to emerge and to be more visible.
Thank you, Jason. Super interesting. Thank you for keeping the croque monsieur metaphor. And regarding the other way that you were mentioning, I would like to ask you, Maria, as you're also involved in research and activist work, with your perspective, what kind of participation actually matters if we want democracy to go beyond only consultation?
I think that's a super important question because, I mean, since yesterday and also from the start of this conference, we've been thinking a lot about the future envisioning. We've been thinking a lot about the utopias. And although I have been engaged into consultations when it comes to negotiation spaces, when it comes to UN, IMF, and World Bank, at the same time, what's really lacking there is the participatory visionary lens. And that is something that is coming from the future utopias. So as part of the work, we also did a workshop that has to do with reimagining or building utopian planning council. And this is something that I'm working on with regards to, with the team, with regards to methodology framework. And how can storytelling and lived experiences be part of the research in order to dictate policies and frameworks and negotiations? So an example to give is we did actually a workshop in Saxony, Saxony, a part of Germany, which is one of the fascist part of Germany, I would say. And we tried to build a commune that is based on the future of 2050. And the methodology that we followed was of oral histories. So we did some interviews which were not based on the surveys or filling some questionnaires, but rather letting people imagine, putting themselves and positioning those people coming from different backgrounds to imagine a commune of 2050 and what can that look like. And the way that the whole conceptualization came around redistributed and restorative justice, what Jason mentioned about the invisible economy, the care and the care economy, basically, that goes invisible behind this whole growth paradigm, is something that was reflected in there because people could really see the impact of what redistribution can look like when it's about mutual accountability, when it's about care, when it's about grief. And that were the values that upheld the society that they were picturing for 2050. And I think these are certain steps and the workshops that can be taken forward when it comes to democratic planning. We need to think about ways coming from an economics point of view, an interdisciplinary lens, where everything is political and you cannot talk about anything without not talking about the politics of that concept. That has to be built together. And that's where the vision becomes much more actionable and implementable. So that's something that I would add to it.
Thank you so much, Maria. I want to know more about the project. Coming back to you, Jason, as someone that is no longer that young, sorry, you're still really engaging with young people. And you have a project called Youth Care for Change. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about this project and also how young people engage with a different kind of economy as one mentioned by Maria.
Yes. I might not be physically that young, but I'm certainly very young in mind. No, but what we're dealing with today is issues that young people come up with and recognize to be the response that they have, that they feel to the global issues, where they feel more and more powerless. They feel that it brings to them mental health issues, that they are missing spaces to socialize, really, and create bonds together. The public spaces where this can happen, and that they need to figure out their own way of doing things. So through this European project called Youth Care for Change, we are working with 300 informal or formal youth organizations and groups around 12 countries, 8 in the EU and 4 outside of the EU. And we're encouraging them to bring out what their desire initiative to work on is, any theme. And we're supporting them through some trainings, some coaching, some helping them develop the thing, and also connecting to others. We heard before by Marisol that one of the issues is the fragmentation that there is. And that's also because there's missing spaces of connection, but also because we're not used to listen to each other anymore. We have these devices that push us into virtual bubbles, and then we don't speak to our neighbor. So the care paradigm, in this sense, which was developed after or throughout the COVID, is about how do we use care as a political means, not just to care about something, but to care with the others, and to create territorial political agendas together on our issues, which could be very local issues, or could be connected to the greater global issues. And the project also allows to subgrant, to support financially a number of these initiatives, and therefore give them their own autonomy in developing what they want to do.
Thank you so much. From what you said both, I think there is something that we can really learn from you, is how you actually connect those different spheres. You both are working with local and institutional, political and youth, and I think like this is, they are not used to listen to one another, and they remain always in really separate bubble. So if you have like some key takeaways, I see the time is running out, but it's definitely too short. But can you tell us a little bit more like how you connect those different spheres?
So I think one phrase that comes in my mind, and maybe that can be an inspiration for the next session, is we often talk about we don't want a seat at the table. And I feel like that's something that we need to build on, because we actually don't want the seat at the table. We want to make our own table, which means that the kaleidoscope needs to expand. We need to have trust, mutual responsibility, accountability, alongside the fact of putting our egos aside. As academic, as economist, as policymaker, as someone coming from the legal background, as an activist, we often work in silos. We prefer that because we have our own mandates. But those mandates, if they're not solidified, they're not going to contribute to anything. And the value that needs to be at the core is care and accountability. And I think that's something that we can take forward. And that is what had made the movements full of resistance and coming together. And we could see that with the case of Palestine.
Yeah, and in a very few seconds, I think that there's really the need to develop a collaborative, collective, cooperative culture. And that can happen in many different ways, but learning how to self-organize and to create solutions on our own, that is one of the ways in which this can happen. Sharing leadership, looking at other models beyond democracy, like sociocracy, facilitation techniques, and all of this can create a way of collaborating together and playing games. We created a game called ChangeNOW, by the way. It was created by a group of, in another project, Erasmus project by a group of a youth group about activism. And it's quite interesting. It's online, you can download it and play it. You can use it as a tool in any session. And hack it and change it, because that's the interesting thing. Don't take the rules or the things as they are. Use them for what your purpose is, and do it together.
Thank you so much. Okay, lastly, and really in few words, can you maybe tell us like a campaign we can engage with, or like something that we can follow for your work, or like an initiative that the audience can connect, or like a key takeaway that we can leave the discussion with? So super concrete.
I think there's so many things that you can engage with, but again, it's like finding alliances with different networks around you. And that's something that I'm building with the workshops, and I think that's something that I will continue doing it aside the work that I do. So, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, I have one campaign that we are working on with many different networks and organizations. My network is a European network in many countries, which is about the right to food. It's called goodfoodforall.eu, and it's an ECI. It's a European Citizens Initiatives, like the one that was said before about My Voice, My Choice. We just started now, so we really need help to spread it, and your signatures if you really think that food should not be just a commodity, but it should be a right, and it should be healthy food, nutritious food. It should be available and affordable to all. It should be locally and organically produced. It should be fair for the farmers who produce it and for the consumers, and be a way also to share culture and again, to cooperate together along the whole food system. So, goodfoodforall.eu.
Thank you very much. And thank you for this conversation. So what the key takeaway I take is that democracy is not only about institutions, civic participation or election. It's also about the economic rules that shape our lives, who carry debts, who owns, who decide, and who will be heard. And what we heard is also there is alternative that exists. I heard a lot about care. I think it's something that we need to focus on. But also movement, local organizing, solidarity economy, and struggle for justice in effort to democratize finance and participation. And please, if you want to know more about their ideas, their work, go find them after this session. We also have Maria that is coming back here at 5:15 for a conference on debt. I think we all need to hear this one. So thank you very much to you both. And let's continue with Mohamed. That's going to do the end of the voting. So I leave the floor to Mohamed.
All right, here we are close to the end. Thank you all for sticking around. Yeah, and thank you for Jason and Maria for such an amazing insights that we had today. So very soon, now you're going to see the QR code again on the screen to be able to vote if you haven't been able to vote in the first time. So we'll give you a couple minutes. So now it's another chance to vote on the tools that you want to work on. And again, these are the tools that you will be able to join us hands-on on a workshop together to build the tools right now after the session. Yes, so now the votes are in and the room has spoken. So the two tools that you've chosen to build are Democracy in Your City Kit, Truth and Trust Network, coming out with 25 votes. On the third place, we have Guide to Building Coalitions. And on the fourth place, we have Unity Narrative Studio. OK, so as the votes are coming in, this is now your mandate. It's now our mandate. And we are going to let it sit. We're not going to let it sit in the document, actually. We're going to make an action here. So in exactly 12 minutes, we will move into the Friends area and start building right now on the spot. And here's how it works. We have dedicated table per each tool with facilitators ready to roll with you and guide you through it. And everyone is welcome to join the table that feels that it's calling them. So let me introduce quickly your facilitators. So if you're here, please raise your hand when you hear your name so people can find you. For Democracy in Your City, Marie and Francisco, if they are here, there they are. And Truth and Trust Network, we have Lori Ann and Maurits. Thank you. Unity Narrative Studio, we have Christina and Antoinette. Amazing. Guide to Building Coalitions, Michael and Ivan. Awesome. So we also have a dedicated table in French for all the French speakers who would like to engage in their language. Erin Sandana will be here, Vice Curator of Global Shapers Paris. Thank you, Global Shapers Paris, for being involved in this and partnering with us and helping also in facilitating the workshop. So again, the meetup will be from 12 to 1 p.m. in Friends area. And find your table, find your people, and let's turn this forward into real change now. Because that's the name of our conference, right? So that's it from my side. I will invite back Maël to come back on the stage for final remarks. Thank you all for being here, and see you soon.
Thank you for being still here after this really long conference. I'm just jumping on stage to thank Gaia, Jadi, Agatha, Mohamed, Victoria, and Mathieu, who actually helped on building this Youth Parliament session. And I also wanted to thank our official partners, Earth for All, Global Shapers Paris, Generation Climate Europe, Changemakers eChange, Youth Negotiator Academy. I hope I forgot no one. But also our technical team that are behind the screen, Marine, Quentin, Vincent. We always forget to thank them, but without them, nothing is possible. And they may be really mad at me because I'm out of time right now. But I also want to thank my dear editorial team, Marie-Amélie, Louise-Océane, Robin, Gaia, and Antonia, that made also this possible. But also I would like to thank you for being present on Wednesday morning and to listen to this, again, really long conference. But also, it's just discussion on stage, but what is really important is the action afterwards. So this is why the meetup is really important, and we're going to develop this Democracy Toolbox all together, and we're going to make more action. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure.